Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here with a Heart for Revival Ministries, and welcome back to our Through the Bible series. Today we are looking at Luke chapter 10, speaking on this topic, half dead and dying. The implication of the passage that we are reading is that there is somebody who is half dead on the side of the road, therefore dying unless somebody comes to minister unto him. In this story, Jesus is showing us that a most unlikely character is going to care for the one who is half dead and dying, thus being somebody who truly loves his neighbor as himself. Let's begin with an introduction of a few verses today. Luke 10, verse 30 through 32. And Jesus answering said, so he's going to teach some people some things. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. And so that's the terminology of the Bible. That's why we have the title we have, leaving him half dead. And by chance, there came down a certain priest. Okay, now this guy, hopefully he's the one who ministers. Nope. A certain priest came that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So this verse gives us the idea that the priest avoided the opportunity to minister. Then it says in verse 32, likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him and passed by on the other side. So he came and he looked upon the individual, but didn't do anything for him. And then these verses lead us up to our first point where we find out who it is that ministers to the half dead and dying. Number one, it's the Samaritan. The Samaritan cared for the half dead. Notice what it says in verse 33, but it wasn't the priest, it wasn't the Levite, but a certain Samaritan. Now I pause right there, leaving the verse up there, because Samaritans and the Jews were very, very much at odds with each other. It's like the woman at the well, okay? That whole story is just like what we are looking at here in Luke 10, the difference between the Samaritan woman and the Jews. They did not like each other. They would travel in different directions or go a long way around about the cities to get somewhere as long as they didn't have to come across each other. So the Samaritan is the very unlikely person in this story to minister because of the hatred between the Samaritans and the Jews. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. So this man that needs compassion is a man from Jerusalem going to Jericho. He is approached by thieves. He is wounded. They leave him half dead and dying. A priest comes by that way, doesn't do anything for him. A Levite comes by the way, doesn't do anything for him. But the Samaritan comes by that way and has compassion on him. So that leads us to our first point. The Samaritan cared for the half dead. And we are reminded today in our study that Jesus is trying to get us to realize that his love surpasses nationality. His love surpasses race. His love surpasses what ails a person. His love surpasses any situation and helps overcome in those situations, which leads us to point number two. The Samaritan sought to cure the half dead. Now, obviously, the Samaritan here is not Jesus Christ and cannot fully heal this particular individual by the snapping of his fingers or by the statement of his mouth, but he can do what he can. So we notice verse number 34. And went to him, the Samaritan did, as he had compassion, and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And so again, we point out, number one, the Samaritan cared for the half-dead. The Samaritan sought to cure the half-dead. He used his own oil. He used his own wine. These were things that he would utilize for personal use in his life, but he is willing to take these personal things and apply them to this man going from Jerusalem to Jericho, who thieves have obviously done a whole lot to him, wounded him, and have stolen from him. This unlikely character passes by as the third person mentioned, and he is the one who seeks to cure, who seeks to have compassion and care for the individual in need, which leads us to a third thought today. The Samaritan committed to the half-dead. The Samaritan committed to the half-dead. And notice the extent of the commitment. On the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, for whatsoever thou spendest more, I will come again and repay thee. And in the previous verse, we saw, as we go back to it, in his commitment, that he bound up his wounds, he poured in the oil and the wine, he even used his own beast, and then he took him to an inn to care for him. And this is the commitment by the Samaritan to this man going from Jerusalem to Jericho, who is half dead and dying. Man, you talk about commitment. We read in verse 35 that it wasn't only the fact that he tried to do with his own hands what he could do, but he even gave money to the innkeeper and asked him to care for this particular man. And if you spend any more, when I come again, by my own word, I will pay you. I will take care of this man. Isn't this a phenomenal teaching that is being displayed here about who we call the Good Samaritan? And in our lesson today of a man who is half dead and dying, there is a willingness by the Samaritan to love somebody who his culture says is unlovable. And Jesus is using this phenomenal story as a lesson to the audience that is before him. So, we're going to take a moment right now to separate the two, okay? The Good Samaritan does what he can in full commitment to this man he came across. He did not look at this man and say, what a waste of a day, but I'll do it. He looked at this man with compassion and said, I'm going to do whatever I can to see to it that this man is better. He committed himself to the man, and even though he had to go, he would then put up the money for the care of this individual to get better. Jesus gives the story, and then he turns back to the people who are listening with these verses. He says, which of these now, okay, which of these 3, thinkest thou was a neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? Okay, so before I go to the next verse, Jesus is saying, was the priest a neighbor to this one who fell among the thieves? Was the Levite a neighbor to this one who fell among the thieves? Or was the Samaritan the neighbor to the one who fell among the thieves? And he said in verse 37, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, go and do thou likewise. So the answer of this individual is the Samaritan. Okay, the one that showed mercy, okay, the one who was willing to care, the one who was showing compassion, the one who was attempting to cure, the one who committed himself to a greater degree, a degree that wouldn't have had to be asked for and wasn't asked for. He just willingly committed himself to that one who was half dead and dying, which, by the way, we are like this one who was fallen among the thieves. In our sin, we are half dead and dying. Aren't you thankful for somebody like Jesus who looked upon you with compassion and did not run the other way like the priest, like the Levite, but like the Samaritan, started to seek for a cure? Binding up your wounds, placing you upon him and his yoke, carrying you to a place of shelter and safety, paying everything and so much the more until you were healed, until you were better. This type of love is extravagant, compassionate, powerful, relentless love. This is the type of love that gives up everything in hopes that someone who is half dead and dying is no longer in that state, but is healed. Whatever sin you have found yourself in, whatever rebellion has swept your soul, Christ desires to minister to you. Likewise, we ought to want to desire to minister to people who are going through it as well. We want to show them the love of God in Christ Jesus. We want to minister unto them His love and His power, and we want to show them there is the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by Jesus Christ. We want to show them the miraculous love of our God. Somebody who is half dead and dying doesn't need us to avoid them. They need us to minister unto them. They need a cure, and the cure is Jesus Christ. Thank you for hanging on through this lesson today. I pray that it's been an encouragement as well as a challenge that we may be changed to even love the unlovable for the glory of God. Thank you for click and play today. Have a blessed day.